do the pretties, the pretty factories. They do what I don't have no like. They do the thing that I don't have the energy to do, which is make everything prettified.
What's your current mindset in Satisfactory? Like when you play, are you just trying to speedrun and get faster and faster, or like are you trying to like learn how to?
So like my philosophy or whatever when you play this game is that you want to like get to tier 7 and 8 as fast as possible, I think.
Okay.
And because like once you get there, that's when you unlock like the faster belt speeds, and that's essentially when you can take advantage of everything that exists in the world properly.
Okay.
So I like to build things, and also I feel like a lot of people, one common mistake that I see a lot of people, man, you're getting all the free tips right now.
Yeah.
But like I feel like a common mistake that I often see people do is that they tend to over-engineer too early. So like they spend too much time setting up like a big steel production, but for what you need it for, you're already overproducing. Because like the thing that is important in the beginning is like you want to produce parts at a rate of which you're using them. So if you're building like another factory, you want to have a factory that produces parts at the same speed or slightly above of what you're building. And one thing I see commonly people do is that they overproduce items and they stack them in like, you know, in storage containers or in like sinking them where they could just reuse a lot of stuff. So like even when I started out in my latest save, I realized that like I could just set up a save file where I produce like iron plates, and then I put them in a container, and then have like a smart splitter. Just like once the container is filled, I'll output that to my next production line, which uses iron plates, and like you can get along pretty fine with just doing that because like you don't build faster than you produce parts. And like for awesome sync shit, you can always go and hunt for animals, and that's like the fastest way to get awesome sync. So like even in the awesome sync discussion, like you can still just like get a lot of stuff from the awesome shop by doing that. Or sync it, I guess. But I mean, everyone's entitled to play the game they want to. Like if people do want to overproduce parts because like they enjoy that part, then definitely. But you're gonna get to a point in the game where you need to set up so complex like factory lines. So like you're gonna want to spend time doing that rather than spending time in the early game trying to like, you know, fish out. There's a reason why people always say that the game starts when you get to trains. Because that's when you actually have access to everything.
Yeah. Zen Salami just poked that I always thought excess was the way to go, they said. And I guess they're getting worried about running out. That's my mindset exactly. Like once I start making shit like any materials, I can just never see myself at a point where I want to have less of it than what I've produced, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you always you want to like, because it's the same. You can apply the same sort of mindset as you have with efficiency as you have with your own production. So like, if you're producing parts that you're supposed to use to build stuff, if you're not building faster than what you're producing, then you're overcompensating. Is what I think.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people spend too much time and getting like sort of burned out by the game because they spend too much time on like that part of the game rather than like keep progressing, because the end game is really when the grind comes. And that's when you're sort of solving the big problems.
I felt the grind when I was setting up my coal gens.
Yeah, and the coal gens is like, that's early game. That's like tutorial essentially in comparison. When you get to like the phase 4 shit. But like even phase 3 actually is a lot of effort. Just setting up
my pipe journey, man. Like Hannah laughed and laughed and laughed.
In my latest save file, I've also done a lot of stuff where I keep moving everything with me. So like I don't use trains, but I've built like big buses, which is a lot of effort because you need to pull a lot of conveyor belts.
Right.
But I've done like outposts where I have like a big bus of all my items that I'm producing, and then I'm just moving them from one container area to another, so I don't have to run back and forth as much. So I just need to run back to my outposts and get it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's pretty sweet.
Those are good nuggets. I'll take that with me and forget it tomorrow.
But that's just how I build. I think if you want to just like finish the game fast, I think there are better ways to play. Honestly, I think the most refresh. Like the most relaxing I've ever played with Satisfactory is when you don't care about spaghetti and just like build everywhere and don't care and just get machines done. Because oftentimes I've seen people that have done that and they're like in the way late tier game very early.
Yeah.
Because they don't spend as much time over engineering what they built.
They just wrecking ball the way through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's all a journey, man. It's not about the destination always. I still haven't finished everything in the game, and
Yeah.
I have like way too many hours.
Despite everything, we can actually touch on that a bit. Despite everything, the game is very fun. It gets better and better and better the more you, in my opinion, the more you unlock, and also at the same time, the more you figure out that optimizing is okay. So a concrete example then, with optimizing is like just fun in itself. The first time in this was tier not too long ago, like 4 or 5, a fair bit after having MK3 belts unlocked. A very simple scene, a very, very simple thing, but just in the Northern Forest with that little, that little cove or whatever with 3 or 4 pure iron nodes.
Yeah.
Just, making space for all of those miners, Mark II miners, connect to 8 smelters each with Mark III belts, and having this perfect flow of ore just going and going and going, and just having all of the green lamps lit up, and then having the smelters connected to the appropriate amount of constructors for rods into screws or just plates. Again, very, very basic stuff for tier 5 especially, just very, very basic stuff, but just having all that set up and all that like flowing perfectly and with all those green lights, that in itself was a reward. And just figuring out that kind of stuff, hopefully earlier than I did with these base mats, but even then, figuring out that achieving a perfect flow can be, even though it might not be like the most optimal way to learn the game and eventually reach tier 7 and 8 if you want to make spaghetti, but that little like just nugget of gameplay is such a nice just washing over feeling to experience. And then there are other moments like that, some about optimization and some about stuff like entirely other stuff, like just different stuff. They all come together to make you feel like you learned something about the game that makes it very enthralling to come back and keep playing.
Yeah.
So despite me being, and then also like for God's sake, I play like 2 MMO games, and in like RPGs, I tend to always want to min-max my stats. I tend to always want to make sure my build is crisp perfect for like the third boss of Elden Ring, who you can sneeze at and he dies, and just make sure everything is absolutely just polished to a T before going in there. Like with that mindset, this game becomes an extremely slow burn, but sometimes sticking with that and sometimes learning to deviate from that is also a learning experience and also a very just like fun journey to go through.
Yeah.
So it is a fantastic time, even though I'm a slow player.
Yeah.
TLDR.
One thing I really enjoyed when I was pretty early on, there's something called the 5x5 challenge, where you're only allowed to build within a 5x5 grid in like a tower. So you're not allowed to build any big factories essentially. And that's sort of when I learned that like, wow, you can really progress really fast because you can't make things perfect, and you have to like sort of, when you're building, because I fit like coal generators and shit like that in the tower, like you can only have so many, and then you think like, oh, I have to reuse parts and that kind of stuff. So like when so when I limited myself for that, it really made me appreciate how like you can keep going even though you don't finish everything.
So could you do it in 5 times 5 times 5?
No, probably not. That tower was huge. This was also before we had advanced clipping, so like before we had soft clipping and that stuff, so it was even harder back then. So I haven't tried it since. So I guess it's a 4x4 is the new 5x5 exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. The blueprint designer says it's only 4x4.
Well, that sounds hot actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun, but it's like a separate playthrough kind of deal. Now I just want to finish the game.